Okay, welcome to the May 2021 North America Marketo user group. My name is Sydney Mulligan. We're going to go through our housekeeping slides. So first of all, Marketo user group house rules. The TLDR is don't be a jerk. Don't do anything here that you wouldn't want someone else to do here. But most importantly, no self-promo, no pitching. If you work for a Marketo partner or a MarTech vendor or anything like that, like you are still, of course, welcome at these events, but you are welcome as a participant. You are welcome to learn and to share knowledge, but not to sell your product or services. On that same note, do not contact anyone from this group without their consent outside of this meeting. If someone brings up an issue here today that you feel like you are able to solve via your product and services, it is absolutely not within your right to reach out to them unsolicited to let them know. And if, yes, anything anyone shares here stays here, obviously, as other than what lives on in perpetuity from this recording. Anything else that is said here after the recording is over stays here. So if you are watching this recording on YouTube right now and feeling like, hey, I got all the value I possibly could have gotten out of this mug by watching this recording on my own time, just know that there's a secret bonus section of content that we do not record and put on YouTube, and we hope you join us in our next meeting to find out what that is. It may include seeing the baby animals from Jackie's Nebraska farm, so you'll have to join and find out. Okay, to stay connected with the mug and with all mugs, you can sign up for an account on Bevy, which is the Marketo user group community tool. Go to mugs.marketo.com and you can find a place to sign up there. You can join any mug chapter. Obviously, all the mugs are virtual right now, so sky's the limit. Any time zone that you wish to pop into a mug, that is your prerogative. We've certainly welcomed people outside of North America to this mug. We just only optimize for North America time zones. So totally up to you. If you are in Australia and want to get up in the middle of the night and join this mug meeting, we will welcome you with open arms. But you can search for the North America Virtual Mug and click Join Chapter. Upcoming opportunities for mug members. So, hot topic. We were just chatting while we were preparing for this meeting today. There's a new Marketo certification exam, which is called the Adobe Certified Expert Marketo Engaged Business Practitioner Credential. I had to practice that a few times. There are now two versions of the exam, and I believe that this first one, the E552, is going to be sunset. And by the way, if I say anything wrong here, just want everyone to know that I did my best to research this, and I think what I'm saying is correct, but I just tried to figure this out like anyone else. I don't have any special knowledge. So if someone else knows something I don't, please feel free to interrupt me. But this E552 exam is going to be sunset, I believe. It is the former MCE, Marketo Certified Expert exam, and its target audience is customers who are core end users only. Like Marketo advanced features have never really been part of this exam. This is just the core Marketo product, and it's quite technical and goes pretty deep on functionality of the core Marketo product. My understanding of this new version of the exam, this E554, again called the Adobe Marketo Engaged Business Practitioner Expert Exam, is the new exam designed by Marketo champions. It is again like targeted at Marketo end users, but my understanding is that it is a bit less deep, less like super technical, and a little more broad. And we'll focus not just on, do you know every single tiny bit of functionality in Marketo, but also, do you understand something like the concept of a lead life cycle, and maybe more just general like marketing operations principles and best practices, rather than just super technical functionality in Marketo. This little link down here, this Spark Adobe link, this goes to this page where you can learn a little bit more about each of these exams. There is a practice test for at least one of them, and you can schedule your exam here, and it just gives you a little more detail about the breakdown of what's on the test. There is a Marketo Certified Expert prep course that you can pay to take. I hope no one pays out of pocket for that. You should definitely get your company to pay for that. That is supposed to be pretty good and give you a good idea of what's on the exam and what you should study for. Overall, if you are a user of Marketo and have been a user of Marketo for, I would say, like at least 6 months to a year, depending on how deep you are in the tool, then you're probably ready to take a test like this. Any questions from anyone about that? Fun time, good stuff. Cool. Jackie is going to be taking this test soon because her certification is about to lapse. So make sure you report back to our next meeting where Jackie will tell us all about which test she chose to take and why and how it went.
I took mine recently too, so if anybody has any
Did
questions
you?
during the Q&A.
Which one did you
Yeah.
take, Lauren?
So I wasn't aware of the 5.2 versus 5.4. I just know that I took the alphabet soup ACEMEBP.
LMNOP.
Exactly. And then I saw that there was some feedback and some edits that were suggested by the Champ crew. So I have a feeling I'm on the 2 version, and hopefully when they sunset it, I don't have to move over and take the 4 again. But if I do, I shall.
That is my understanding, is that the 4 is replacing the 2. And if you've recently taken and passed the 2, then that stands until it expires. And probably by then, 2 years from now, I hope that there's only 1 test that we have to worry about. I think that's what's happening, but
I just need to make a Post-it note so I can remember AMEBP.
Adobe Marketo Engage Business Practitioner Expert exam. Quite a mouthful. Quite a mouthful.
Doesn't really roll off.
But if you, it does not roll off the tongue. I really preferred MCE, to be totally honest, although I understand rebrand, blah, blah, blah.
Yes.
Much easier to remember. But if you have never taken any Marketo certification at all before, strongly encourage you to take it. If you have some amount of experience with the product, it can open a ton of doors for you career-wise. If you are in a marketing ops role or in a marketing ops adjacent role and looking to go kind of deeper down the career path of marketing ops, this is a really great first step, in my opinion. I always tell people that have never taken the exam before or have never had the credential before, that once you pop that up on your LinkedIn, you're going to get just bombarded with recruiter emails all the time. So particularly if you're interested in getting a new job, or even just kind of proving your expertise in your current company and using that to negotiate for a raise or a promotion, this is a great way to do it, in my opinion.
Yep, and you can do it virtually, right? So that it's a proctored online exam if you prefer not to go into during these crazy transition days into a foreign airspace, right? And sit for a couple hours. You can do it at home, and you can do it at your own pace. You know, a proctor will come onto a Zoom chat kind of like this, and you'll spin your computer around or use a camera to show that you don't have cheat sheets about all the Marketo goodness that you want to remember for the exam up on your walls or anything. But yeah, it's real straightforward. And this is my fourth time, fourth go around with certification, and worth it every time. I never let it lapse, and it's definitely a feather for your cap. So totally recommend it.
Yeah, totally agree. I used to always go to the testing centers. I had a nice little ritual for myself every year where I would go first thing in the morning to the testing center, which is like the DMV, but for taking tests, and then go to Chick-fil-A and get chicken minis. It was really nice, but I did have to do the online proctored test last time, and it was fine.
Yeah.
There were no chicken minis at the end, but that's okay.
It's come a long way. For anybody that might have taken the proctored, an earlier version of the proctored exam, they've changed vendors now, and it's much more seamless. Just like everything, I think people have leveled up the certification game at Adobe. Before, like you had to have like a third camera away from your machine, and it was only purchasable through the online proctoring company, and they wanted to like watch your hands while you typed, and it was an awkward dance, right? And wasn't Mac friendly for the first maybe 6 months, which was really interesting. But now it's smooth as it can be, and kind of fun. I don't know, but yeah, if you take it, you don't pass it the first time. You're not alone. Just stick with it. I think the first time sometimes is just a level set of what you're going to see and how to take the exam, because it's a very crowdsourced kind of proprietary feel. Like the questions don't all feel like they're from the same author. I think it's more standardized now than it has been in the past. But there's definitely, it's its own animal, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And once you see the way the questions are worded and kind of wrap your head around how the test itself plays out, if at first you don't succeed, try again, and eventually you'll get to where you need to go.
Yeah, totally. All right, cool. Well, other MUG meetings you can attend. So as you know, all the MUGs are virtual right now still, as far as I'm aware. I don't think any MUG is meeting in person yet. Although I suppose that day is on the horizon. I don't know. you can attend any MUG meeting you would like to, any MUG meeting in the whole entire world, totally up to you. As you can see, there are quite a few MUGs happening today. So if you want to go seek out some other MUGs to go to today, it might not be too late, although I don't know what time these groups are meeting. There are more meetings, some tomorrow, some later this month. So feel free to, again, sign up for a Bevy account. You can look at any of the MUG meetings that are scheduled for any of the groups that exist on Bevy. Including the champion office hours, where current Marketo champions will just chill and wait for you to come ask them questions, and then they will answer them because they're super smart Marketo people. So make sure you join that. And speaking of super smart Marketo champions, what an excellent segue, if I do say so myself. We are so excited to have Lauren with us today, who's going to be talking about the secrets of virtual event success. Lauren is a 4-time Marketo certified expert, as she said. Did you just say 5? No, you said 4. Is this up to date? 4. Okay. And she's a 2021 Marketo champion, and she's super smart. So I'm going to let her take it from here and go through her slides on virtual event success. Thank you for joining us, Lauren.
Thank you for having me, and that's high praise, Sydney, from someone as esteemed as yourself. So I appreciate you, and thanks for having me, everybody. Hopefully you can glean some information from these slides. This was a reboot of what I presented at Summit. I don't know if anybody caught the session at Summit by chance. Cool.
I did. It's awesome.
Natalie might have. Thank you. Well, it was a fun experience, and it was almost a bit surreal, because a lot of what I was talking about was sort of this like meta experience around participating in an event that was formatted on the back end in a lot of the same ways that my events were formatted in over the course of 2020. So some of what I'm talking about and some of the best practices that I'm going to share were put in play by Adobe for Adobe Summit this year. So it's kind of cool to be in a position where traditionally I had been recording people to participate in my virtual events, and suddenly I was on the other end of the camera. That was pretty cool. But yeah, so I think the first tip and the first play that I saw Adobe make around virtual events for their summit, which was something that was a point of contention in my organization at first, was the notion that even though you're conducting an event just like this, in real time, it does not have to be live. Pre-recording is your friend. Simulive is amazing, right? So I think David Bessie on the call here can attest to the fact that Neo had traditionally been recording for the purpose of rebroadcasting after the event to people that didn't attend. But when I suggested the notion around the middle of March, when everything started to go online, we were seeing lots of well-intended stakeholders in our company go onto screen shares, and sometimes demos would lock up. Sometimes kids would go running through the background in their underwear, myself included, right? I have a little guy, I know how it works. Sometimes, people would just go blank in a moment, and all of these wonderful unpredictabilities are definitely risks you can mitigate when you think about pre-recording your event. Now, I got a lot of pushback, especially from our developer relations team internally, around the notion of pre-recording. They thought I was ripping out the magic somehow, people are going to call us out. It's going to be, cold and flat and feel robotic and not be interactive. So we came up with this notion of Simulive, right? So we're rebroadcasting a really well curated session that's nice and polished and predictable and mitigates risk for me as I'm, letting somebody kind of catch me in a trust fall by broadcasting their content. If it's pre-recorded, I know what they're going to say before they say it. So that mitigates some risk for me as a marketer. But then to encourage people in the chat, right, with live Q&A, to be able to form a dialogue with the event organizers, with experts, with the speakers themselves even, opens up a wonderful kind of hybrid approach to virtual events. So definitely thinking Simulive is the way to go based on our past experience. And it's often a scenario with smaller events. Sometimes with bigger events, it's more about blocking and tackling any kind of trolls or competitors or bizarre comments that you might see from a random attendee. But for mid-sized to smaller events, showing up with canned questions at the get-go. You don't have to worry about making sure that what your speakers are going to say is on brand or on message. You've already got that in the can. You can start the Q&A off instead of at the end of the speaking session, right at the top. Jump in and encourage dialogue. We at NEO are held against a score called DB Engines. Right. And this DB Engine's third-party score shows where we rank in social media presence against other vendors. And we found that we would jump into chat and we would say, hey, share your thoughts on today's event with hashtag Neo4J and get entered to win a free t-shirt, right? And that bumped up our DB Engine score tremendously the first time we tried it, right? Because it was engagement, right? So definitely come ready to get people talking, whether it be in your Q&A or in social media platforms or both. And answering the Q&A, I think at first, when we first spun up our monthly series, which after, all was said and done in 2020, I think we had 40,000 registrants from across 140 countries. And I'll stop short of telling you how much pipeline it influenced, but it was one of the biggest drivers of revenue for the company in 2020. And it's pushed us towards some really record-breaking results, which has been incredible. But I think at first, when we were early on and trying to figure out how to engage with our attendees, we felt compelled to answer every question. We felt terrible about the questions that didn't get answered. We wanted to put the questions into a field in our CRM and ensure that like an SDR was going to like call somebody and answer every last little inquiry. That kind of evolved, we'll say, right? So it became apparent to us that it was just too big of an undertaking. We had, thousands of registrants and attendees each month. From across the globe and lots of very technical developer-centric kind of questions. So the workflow that we figured out as kind of a core marketing team was to create a Slack channel, right? And we had subject matter experts from across our organization pop into a Slack channel for us. And the day of the event, they're watching the broadcast in attendee mode. We didn't let them into the platform. We didn't want them to crash the platform mid-broadcast, right? So we have them in a Slack channel. They're watching as the questions are reviewed and approved, right? I would hand curate the questions to make sure none of our competitors were hanging out and trolling. So as soon as I approved the question, they'd see it published in real time. And they were able to either respond with an @ tag to the person as themselves in the session, or in the Slack channel, they were able to volley up responses for us to offer to our attendees. So by kind of crowdsourcing, we got some deeper answers than I think marketing alone could deliver to our developer community. But the notion of answering everybody's question kind of went out the window. We just looked for quality, I think, and ensuring that we mentioned if your question didn't get answered live, that they could reach out to us at webinar@neo4j.com and we connect them with the right person. So that was our workflow for Q&A. And looking back, I don't regret a thing around recording. It minimizes the risk. It maximizes your latitude to be able to go out and create demand. You can, instead of fussing over people's decks, minutes before they're about to go on, or worrying about somebody that skipped a dress rehearsal, you can get laser focused on, do I feel like I've got the most juice out of this orange that I could? Do I feel like I've gotten as many attendees as I can? Is there anything else I can do on digital to level this up? Is there anything I can do for like an intro video to make it really splashy the next round? You really get to a place where you're comfortable with your content when it's recorded ahead of time, and it lets you level up your game in powerful ways. So speaking of content, and looking for ways to optimize it, I think it's important when we're broadcasting, especially if a lot of what you're seeing in an ops role is driven by the product marketing team, to be sure that you're not talking about feature functionality. In a world where Zoom fatigue is palpable and we're inundated in our inboxes with invitations for events that perhaps are inspiring to some degree by the people that create it, because they're super stoked about the latest dot release or feature functionality that's on the radar for their product roadmap. At the end of the day, feature functionality isn't what inspires people to take on new projects, right? If I'm going out into the market and I'm telling a developer audience that they're going to have to learn a whole new coding language, and they're going to have to make a case to buy something to their boss, and then they're going to have to implement this technology, and they're going to have to learn how to work it, and that they're going to spin their daily life on its head, they have to be super inspired. They have to be jazzed. They have to say, hey, this is going to get me promoted. Hey, this is a game changer for my organization, for my career, right? I mean, it has to be something that gives all the feels, right? You need those goosebumps. So try and remove yourself from thinking about what you're going to talk about, and start letting your product in a B2B world take the backseat to your people. Start thinking about who you want to celebrate. You know, for us at my current company, we were fortunate enough to have people that could talk to supply chain considerations, to vaccine research, to contact tracing. We had a gentleman from NASA talk about how our product got the Mars mission accelerated by a full 2 years. We got to Mars 2 years quicker, and we were able to talk about that. So that's really, I think, at the end of the day, what was at the heart of our success. We weren't talking about, you know, our new cloud-based this or our new, you know, security feature that. We were letting our inspirational clients really drive our content, right? And they weren't necessarily talking at the audience just to check a box and to deliver a project. They were super engaging, right? So some of your clients that are willing to be referrals are more charming than others. They have an X factor. People get excited to hear, like, I can see Natalie smiling. She's probably thinking about a couple in particular. Go with those people that know how to be dynamic on camera, right? And don't be hesitant to use them kind of as your poster people across, you know, social media, and to double down on celebrating them and their success. And, you know, I think when you think about what you're doing from a marketing lens, and you think about the content you want to curate for your audience, I think it's funny. We would often, in my little crew and my team, we would talk about how we felt like at moments in 2020, sort of like PBS, like public broadcasting producers or something. Like, we're sitting there trying to figure out what content we're going to curate and how we can influence as much revenue as possible. But at the end of the day, when we backed away from the notion of driving, you know, lead velocity, which is important, which you have to do, but when we stepped back and said, but what matters most to our audience? How is our audience going to walk away with true value? That's when things really started to connect. That's when the power of the broadcast, you know, centered on the right motivation, which was just looking for ways we could get people excited about revolutionizing the way they work. So that's all well and good, right? But at the end of the day, we're held to goals. As marketers, we need to make the money happen, right? And so how did we do that? What would I advise around a team, kind of a fledgling webinar group, how they could expand their reach? So what we looked at was email fatigue, right? We're super lucky as an organization. We don't have a problem with unsubscribes. We're an open source company. We've been around for 13 years. We're a welcome guest in inboxes, and, you know, steady state really on sender score and unsubscribe since I got here a couple of years ago, which is amazing because we've ramped up our communications a lot. But at the end of the day, that doesn't mean, even if the unsubscribes aren't spiking when you're doing like monthly virtual events, it doesn't mean you're not getting deleted. You know, that doesn't mean that people aren't waking up at 7 a.m. Pacific and going, okay, this isn't from anybody that I need to report back on, and swiping and trashing your invites, right? So we would get healthy bumps on our e-blasts to generate registrations. But what really unlocked the whole magic, I think, behind the registration volume that we were able to achieve in a year where we were competing with a lot of different virtual events, was the integrations that we put in place. So Clearbit, if anybody uses Clearbit out there, I am like the biggest fan of Clearbit, and what it performed for us last year was nothing short of a digital miracle. Can't say enough good things about them. I know we're not here to do a sales pitch, and I'm not being reimbursed in any way for this fandom, except for with a coffee cup from their dev team, which was nice. But we were able to take our audiences that we were inviting via email and Marketo, upload them as an audience in Clearbit. Clearbit would then go out and find for us the social profiles by finding like a likely match for personal emails based on the business emails that we provided to Clearbit. They would go out, and we were then able to build audiences to put messaging in Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn for the same people we were inviting via email. So we knew we had a healthy list in email. We knew we were not getting the reach, consistently month over month that would sustain us from a goal standpoint, because we were held to a certain target for database growth for new people, right? So we couldn't continually just keep inviting people from our database. We had to expand out beyond our Marketo universe, and Clearbit really helped us to double down there. So super happy with the results that we got when we thought beyond just the social posts to the audiences that already followed us, and started really matching up our target segmentations in Marketo with target segmentations on social. And I think it met people more where they were at, right? So instead of being putting the onus down on them to log in to our registration form and secure their spot, via email, we started finding them when they were relaxed, when they were happy, when they were looking at pictures of their kids, and their friends. And, we met them at a place that was a place of relaxation and kind of escape from maybe the Zoom fatigue to some degree. When we found them on their social media, it was super powerful. And then, we were held to a monthly cadence. And finally, around the holidays, we took a month off, and looking at our digital results, right? I sit at an interesting intersection. I manage our page digital, but I'm also marketing ops, right? So powerful kind of intersection there. And it was kind of cool when we took the time off and we had extra time. We didn't really rest on our laurels. We just said, okay, we'll pop up the one that's 2 months out, and we'll just kind of let it hang out. We'll put out our promotions and see if it makes a difference. And sure enough, we held ourselves to this monthly cadence just because the calendar dictated it. But at the end of the day, when we gave ourselves about 6 or 7 weeks, the machine learning in our digital programs really had time to lock in. And instead of the lull in cadence, creating some kind of lack of top of mind awareness or whatnot, we saw a bigger audience because we gave ourselves a little more time. So make sure that the data drives your cadence and your frequency. Your audience will tell you if you're picking the right length of time between your digital events. And enforce those SLAs, right? So a lot of times I see marketers come to me, especially after I presented the session at Adobe Summit. A lot of the questions were around, how do I make this sane? How do I make it so not every stakeholder in the company is coming to me like a drive-through window requesting digital events? How do I protect my team from burnout, from trying to please everybody and deliver results for everybody throughout my internal customers throughout the organization? And when I first came to Neo, it was very a responsive kind of workflow, like maybe a sales rep, or maybe a product team member, or maybe a developer relations team member had a great idea for a webinar. And marketing ops was always at the receiving end of, half-baked, maybe invitations, I actually literally saw someone approach our ops group and say, hey, this event needs to take place next week, and we need the invite to go out tomorrow, and it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And really, don't yes yourself to death in that moment. Protect yourself, protect your team, and say for the quality of the event to be worth the calories expended, we require 6 weeks to put together a world-class event. And, you know, maybe they can whittle down a little bit if you want to let them away with it. But at the end of the day, don't hesitate to enforce SLAs to make your quality as high as possible and to protect your resources, right? Taking care of the team that takes care of the company is super important. So making sure that the SLAs are enforced and actionable is clutch. And then direct media toward the recording, not just the reg, right? Everybody's so hyper-focused on how many people signed up, how many people attended, but the amount of time and effort you put into making the recording and making the event wonderful should live on and be consumable and meet people where they're at when they have the time to watch it. And so don't hesitate. Direct media, paid media toward the recordings, not just focusing forward on future events and registrations. So yeah, that brings me to kind of another notion around how you can repurpose your content, right? Hi, Marty. But yeah, no, how you can repurpose your content. So when you think about, sorry, I have a little guy in the next room that seems to think it's music class. When you think about how to repurpose your recordings with paid media, also think around how to break them down into smaller bits. So whenever I'm recording, I'm thinking in Lego pieces. I'm thinking, okay, I can break up this session into sound bites and repurpose them with a head and a tail segment that would make them customized for APAC. Right? So, or I could have one session where my senior leadership team representative records all the intros for everybody that's going to speak throughout the day. And then when the speaker gets on board, they just have to thank him, right? They don't all have to be in the same room at the same time. And when I break these sessions down into bits and pieces, I can repurpose them. So I can take half of one presentation, if I build it in the right kind of Lego modality and mindset, I can use that again in a nurture and rebroadcast it, you know, on another day at another time, and none the wiser as long as I suppress the attendees, right? So I think it's important to think about how much use you can get out of the time you're putting into the content that you're recording, and how you can break it down into smaller pieces. Like one of the bigger successful programs that we were able to beta test in 2020 around generating registrations was Google's Performance Max programs, right? And one of the campaign components you have to have for a Performance Max campaign is a video, a 1-minute video. And we were smart enough to think around how to promote our recorded webinars after the fact with a 1-minute segment. While we were recording, we strategized on what we wanted that 1-minute segment to even look like before we hit the record button to prepare our content. And that was super helpful because when all was said and done, we had everything we needed even before the event took place to promote it, you know, in perpetuity. Rebroadcasting in region-friendly times is super important. I know everybody kind of agonizes over finding that one-size-fits-all global perfect sweet spot. It doesn't exist. You know, we tested so many different times. APAC is such a broad, you know, large region, and EMEA always is at kind of a balancing act with Pacific time zones. So don't hesitate to say that you're syndicating your content, essentially. We've found that when we had a team member in region record a specialized introduction to the session, almost like Masterpiece Theater or something, if you go back to the PBS analogy, for those old enough to remember Masterpiece Theater, you know, you can have a team member sit down and say that, you know, because the event was so successful, we're here to present it to you in an Asia Pacific friendly time. So please enjoy the content. We'll be live in the chat to answer any questions you have. People are excited. They feel like they're watching special programming. They don't feel like they were left out of the original. They feel like you thought about their needs and met them where they wanted to be, instead of had the audacity to expect them to wake up at 4 a.m. to watch you talk. So you can also, with some platforms, and this is a capacity that we're dipping our toe into that we love, have a setup where an evergreen broadcast is on the other end of your sign up form. So when people come to your site to register, when they respond to your media, when they respond to your outreach, they come to your site, and lo and behold, there is a session, like a demo perhaps, that is about to begin. So while they have the time to look, and while you're top of mind, and while their interest is piqued, evergreen broadcast can broadcast as soon as the person expresses interest in the event, which is super cool. It's a little bit edgy, but you can even have the Q&A directed into your Slack, so that you're able to be live for evergreen broadcast when people do visit the site. But at the end of the day, just record with many purposes in mind, right? It's a singular event at an isolated moment in time, but it doesn't have to be a big effort that you undertake without the notion of getting the most out of the content that you record. Finally, enabling your sales team, right? So even bigger and broader than sales, we've seen our various departments get involved, whether it's developer relations or professional services. Have people, if you have Gaggle Amp, if you have another kind of social sharing structure in place, get them to be excited and promote. It's a family affair, right? At the end of the day, if the attendees and the registrants are going to be involved in some kind of revenue generating activity, everybody's got a vested interest in making this thing succeed. It's not just marketing's project, right? So reach out far and wide, get your company involved, get them to use their network, make your hashtags trend, and get people excited, because that reach is clutch, and everybody's in it together, right? But be sure to level set expectations. You don't want to go in front of your sales team and overpromise and underdeliver, right? So cautious at first, right, is I think the way to go. As you're promoting the event ahead of time, maybe only talk to the registrations and attendee percentage that you think is actionable from the data that you see from your initial outreaches. If you meet and exceed those expectations, awesome. But never go with a stretch goal and socialize it publicly. It can come back to haunt you. Better to underpromise and overdeliver, and communicate before and after. So get everybody hyped internally, but then don't forget about the importance of circling back and making sure that people are looking at the Salesforce campaigns. People are actively following up. To assume that the handoff, if you fast track an MQL from an event that you've been working super hard on, that is your passion project, is completely interpreted the same way by your sales development team is folly. Like, just because you love it and it's your baby doesn't mean you have to, or doesn't mean you can't spend some time telling other people why it's important to before and after the event. And check in with your sales team after the event to get some candid feedback. I've always said with sales, be sure you get the crankiest, hardest to please sales rep, and you get the one that's the flag waving fan of marketing. Get feedback from both of those people. One will probably not be what you want to hear, but it's the worst of the worst. The other will lift you up and celebrate what you've done and make you feel great. And if you pick the people on both ends of the spectrum, everybody else tends to fall right in line with what you're doing. But even the cranky salesperson, right, might have a referral for you to another future speaker that could be really dynamic and level up your game when it comes to content. So that's all I have for you today. Happy to answer any questions anybody might have. It looks like there's a couple notes in the chat here.
Melissa is very excited about your son's music class. That was me.
Yes.
All right.
It was definitely a very Marty moment. He's definitely my little artist.
I loved it. All right. Thank you so much, Lauren. I'm going to stop the recording now. So just a reminder to anyone watching this on YouTube, you're missing out on the rest of this riveting discussion. So join
The
us
farm
live
animals
next
are
time.
showing now. Yep, this is the part you don't get to see if you don't come live.
Sorry. Okay.